All right, as we get back here and we take a look at section 15.4, we're going to take a look at social media and management. So we're going to talk about the use of social media has changed the fabric of our lives. Man, that sounds a little bit dramatic, but I think it actually has the benefit of being true. We're going to take a look at social media and managerial and organizational effectiveness. We're going to take a look at the downsides of social media. And then we're also going to take a look at managerial considerations in creating social media policies. So social media, one of those things here that we've seen, really in the last 15 to 20 years that has burst onto the scene in terms of the way people interact with each other, in terms of the way news is spread. And there are a lot of potentials for positives with social media with business, but there are also a lot of potential pitfalls for businesses. And it's one of those things where if you're an organization, any false steps on social media can get amplified to the nth degree because it's in front of a lot of faces, and people, it's almost like it spreads like wildfire, right? We call it going viral, right? So any mistake that is made, with regards to social media is amplified because of the reach of social media. However, on the flip side, we talk about the reach of social media and how your business can reach more people than ever before at a very, you know, really a fairly cheap cost, where you're not having to shell out hundreds of thousands or perhaps millions of dollars to run a social media platform and get those viewers. So we're talking a little bit more about social media and management as 15.4 sets out. So the use of social media has changed the fabric of our lives. So more than half of the world's population, about 3.8 billion people, use social media in 2020. It's an increase of almost 10% from 9.2% from 2019. A survey of 529 small business owners found that 3 out of 4 invested in social media advertising in 2019. Overall, businesses spent more than $89 billion on social media advertising in 2019, and over 50% of new brands are discovered through public social media feeds. And you can see here that we have different social networks. So we have Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest, Snapchat, YouTube, WhatsApp, and Reddit. So the use of social media, and then you can see there we have differing age groups. So in the blue, we've got 18 to 29. In the purple, we've got 30 to 49. In the green, 50 to 64. And then the red, 65 plus. So we've got share of respondents. And then we have the platforms themselves, and you can kind of see with what types of social media are popular with the age group. So for instance, if you look at like Snapchat not hugely popular with people over the age of 65, but younger generations, people aged 18 to 29, definitely more popular with those. Same thing you look at like with Reddit. You see individuals maybe not as popular for age 65 and older, and you can kind of see the general trend of this graph is if you're in that 18 to 49 range, you're clearly tops in terms of social media usage and engagement on social media. Where the 50 and up crowd, you see a little bit more, or you see not as much, except for YouTube. YouTube appears to be pretty popular with all of the age demographics, including the 65 plus, right? So definitely social media trends younger in terms of usage, in terms of content creators, in terms of advertising. It's definitely a young person's game when it comes to social media. Social media and managerial and organizational effectiveness. So employment recruiting. So social media are widely used for recruiting employees. More than 90% of companies today use social media for recruiting. That's an unbelievable figure. Many companies use social media for more than just scouting new employees. It's also important to note that social media can lead to hiring discrimination. So with social media, again, double-edged sword, good and bad, where social media can be good for prospective employees recruiting. However, whether it's implicit or explicit bias, it is important to know that it can lead to discrimination in terms of just the amount of people that or the types of people that get in front of your platforms. It can be something that can almost be done unconsciously with the organization when it comes to hiring. Employee productivity. So while overuse of and even addiction to social media exist and can cause serious problems, there seems little doubt that social media tools at work used appropriately can make communication by and among employees more productive. So managers need to remember that employees don't have to be in touch all the time, no matter how easy it is. So again, we're going to kind of see a theme here of double-edged swords when it comes to social media. It can certainly lead to more productivity within the organization, but when it's used not so well, when it's used maybe for more personal aspects, it can lead to lack of productivity. And again, it's all about what sort of culture does your company deploy? What sort of employees do you have working with you to manage that time effectively and well? Let me take a look at employer productivity. So companies of all sizes and in all industries believe the benefits of social media, including their ability to keep employees engaged and satisfied and therefore productive. The essence of social media is connectivity. So this really can lead to more employer productivity, whether it be the individuals themselves within the organization going out there and marketing products, marketing the business, whether it's being able to reach prospective customers via social media platforms to advertise and sell their products to people. It's also another thing to basically almost can be a customer service hotline. Social media can be where it's easier to interact with the company and the organization rather than calling a 1-800 number to express maybe displeasure with the product. It's easier to get onto social media, make contact with the PR people or with the social media coordinators of these organizations. Innovation in social media. So we take a look at crowdsourcing. So if you're looking for an innovative solution to a problem, you might conclude that the more people you have thinking about the problem, the more potential ideas will be generated. So crowdsourcing using the internet and social media to enlist a group outside of the organization for help solving a problem. So when we talk about innovation in social media, we talk about taking a lot of minds to a problem. Okay, and those minds, the more minds you have on a problem or an idea, the potential for better outcomes when it comes to solving company problems. Then we have sales and brand recognition. So social media can increase product and service awareness, generate customer inquiries. Social media can enhance relationships with customers. Social media can increase the ability to reach customers on a global scale. And then for smaller local businesses, social media can foster co-promotion of local businesses and the image of the small business in the area. And then social media can foster customers or consumers conversations about the brand. So that sales and brand recognition, especially for small businesses, is huge because it gives kind of a central market or a central platform for the company to talk about their product, talk about what they do, the services that they offer. And social media is so ubiquitous in today's society that a good product, a good service, a good business is going to be oftentimes referred in the social media sphere and platform. So it's a good way for small businesses to promote their business relatively cheap via the social media platform. And then we have corporate reputation, our last one there. So some companies have been very successful at using social media to build and protect their reputations. It can create and enforce a social media policy for employees. So this is an example where, if you work for an organization and you're posting things on social media, people associate you with the company that you work for. And whether it's fair or not, what you post sometimes people will view as what you post as the company that you work for endorsing whatever it is that you're posting. And sometimes people step in it in social media. They post controversial things or things that may not seem right or just. And sometimes companies have to lay down the law in terms of policies that are made with regards to posting on social media, because ultimately they don't want their reputation to be affected by something their employee is posting on their personal social media sites. Even though it's their personal social media site, companies still are well within their right to create and enforce social media policies for their employees without regards to them posting. So it's, again, kind of a double-edged sword where it can be used for good, but it can also harm a reputation way easier than it can make a reputation. So you need to appoint experienced managers to monitor your social media presence and respond quickly and appropriately to negative posts. Acknowledge there is a problem. Don't delete the comment, with exceptions. Okay, profanity, offensive terminology. Take the conversation offline if necessary. So, one thing that you'll see with social media is, people will, vent, and it's always important to, respond quickly, appropriately to those negative posts. Try to rectify the problem as soon as possible. But if at all possible, acknowledging it, working with that person online, but then taking it offline if necessary, then to truly solve the problem, can also be beneficial to the organization as well, to sort of take care of that customer in maybe a less than public way to ensure that they will come back. But it's one of those things where if you see negative social media posts, consistently negative social media posts, you need to acknowledge and then try to address that situation, because clearly there is a problem if it's issues that are consistently occurring within the organization. Downsides of social media. So cyberloafing. So that's using the internet at work for personal use. We have phubbing and FOMO. So microaggressions or acts of unconscious bias include a number of seemingly tiny but repeated actions like interrupting others, mispronouncing or mistaking someone's name, and avoiding eye contact. One particular form of microaggression is called phubbing, or which is for phone snubbing or ignoring those present in order to pay attention to a mobile phone, or the fear of missing out, FOMO, or being out of touch when something happens in our social network. Security, guarding against cyber threats. So security is defined as a system of safeguards for protecting information and technology against disasters, system failures, and unauthorized access that result in damage or loss. Security is a continuing challenge, with computer and cell phone users constantly having to deal with threats ranging from malicious software, what we call malware, that tries to trick people into yielding passwords and information, to viruses that can destroy or corrupt data. And we see these on the uprise more and more. Here at the school we have firewalls and ideas, protocols set in place to ensure that, hey, we're not clicking on links that can be potentially harmful to our organization, because ultimately the loss of a computer system or a potential malware or ransomware attack could really hurt our ability to do teaching and learning in the school. So it's it's really important that we as teachers try to exercise that those cyber threats as best we can against them happening. Then privacy, so keeping things to yourself. So privacy is the right of people not to reveal information about themselves. So identity theft, in which thieves hijack your name and identity and use your good credit rating to get cash or buy things. And then we have false information. So what's the story with fake news? So misinformation is information that is false but not created with the intent of causing harm. And then there's disinformation. This is the information that is false and deliberately misleading. And you guys have seen, especially on social media platforms, the huge rise in misinformation and disinformation, trying to convince people of information that simply is not true. Then managerial considerations in creating social media policies. So social media policy describes who, how, when, and for what purpose of social media use and the consequences for noncompliance. Assessing an organization's social media readiness. So consider the social media readiness of an organization to which you belong, how supportive management is of creating communities, and then how well the culture fosters collaboration of knowledge and sharing. So, and then how widely social media is used to collaborate. So, it's one of those things as an organization, you have to introspectively look at your organization, and is your company necessarily mobile enough to have a large presence on the social media platform. So improving communication effectiveness. So non-defensive communication. So when we talk about that, defensive communication can either include aggressive, attacking, or angry communication, or passive, withdrawing communication. Non-defensive communication that is assertive, direct, and powerful. So improving that. So improving your non-defensive communication, very important. Using empathy. So empathy is the ability to recognize and understand other person's feelings and thoughts. Empathy works for managers because it is not the same thing as uncritically accepting others' words and behaviors. Rather, it relies on a conscious effort to understand the emotional impact of our own words and behaviors on others. Being an effective listener. So active listening is the process of actively decoding and interpreting verbal messages. Listening is an important communication skill. Most of us don't listen as well as we think we do, and you can learn to be a better listener. And one of those things, we've talked about emotional intelligence a little bit. Your book's definitely touched on it a lot more than the video lectures have. But the ability to sit there silently and simply listen to what the other person is saying, and not just sit there and listen silently, but refuse the urge to formulate your response as they are talking, because that's really where people run into trouble when it comes to listening to people, where they're listening, but at the same time they're listening, they're formulating what their response is going to be to that individual. And that's where a lot of times people kind of lose the plot on what is actually being said. So you have to be very careful when it comes to those, that effective listening styles, right? You got to kind of take a beat to listen, kind of clear your mind, focus on that individual. And then once they respond, then you can go forth and, or once they're done, you can then go forth and give your response. Then we have being an effective writer and being an effective speaker. So, figuring out ways to communicate effectively via writing and speaking can be, paramount when it comes to being an effective communicator. Talking about non-defensive communication. So here are some examples of non-defensive communication as we look here to see where this table is in our book. Got a few pages behind. There we go. Page 676 in your book is where you can see this. So the toward defensiveness style is evaluate. So toward defensiveness example, your work is sloppy. Controlling, okay, you need to strategizing. You can kind of see here where the defensiveness style, some of these buzzwords and some of the quotes that go along with it. And then you can see where more non-defensive communication, where it's descriptive, it's problem solving, it's being straightforward, it's being empathetic, it's being, treating your individuals equally, it's being, open and honest. And the examples that sort of come with being non-defensive, right? And that's what we kind of want to strive for within an organization. We wish to not have the defensive communication and be more so non-defensive with how we address our superiors and subordinates. So using empathy, again, empathy is the ability to recognize and understand another person's feelings and thoughts. So when we talk about cognitive empathy, it means you can identify how another person feels and consider what they may be thinking. Emotional empathy is the ability to physically feel what others feel. And then compassionate empathy. With compassionate empathy, we not only grasp a person's predicament and feel their feelings, but we're moved to help in some way. So research on this one, Ekman says this form of empathy is dependent on first mastering your cognitive and emotional empathy. So it's a little bit of a stage process. Being an effective listener. So again, focus on the other person, ask open-ended questions that allow them to elaborate, approach conversations with curiosity, avoid the tendency to judge, and then be mindful and fully present. We kind of talked about being an effective listener just a little bit ago, so we won't spend a ton of time with this one. But again, that idea of not formulating your response, focusing on that person, and when it does time to ask questions, ask open-ended questions, no yes or no's, allow them to, elaborate, explain themselves as best they can. Being an effective writer. So start with your purpose. So rather than building up to the point you are delivering, if you're delivering a routine or positive news, you should start by telling your purpose and stating what you expect from the reader. Write simply, concisely, and directly. Short and sweet is the key. Keep your words simple and use short words, sentences, and phrases. Be direct instead of vague, and use active rather than passive voice. Know your audience. So send your message to all who need the information it contains, but only to those people. Resist the urge to include everyone, and be especially careful in responding to messages to think before you click reply all. And then don't ignore and don't show ignorance of the basics. So texting has made many people more relaxed about spelling and grammar rules. Although it's fine among friends, as a manager, you'll need to create a more favorable impression in your writing. And then being an effective speaker. So check out the TED model. God, we love TED Talks. You can find some good models, TED Talks online. So these resources provide ideas for how to conceptualize and structure your presentation based on outcomes you'd like to achieve with it. Ask questions to help yourself prepare. You can do away with a great deal of anxiety about speaking in public by knowing what and how to prepare. Arrive early. Check the room to be sure promised equipment is in place and working. Tell them what you're going to say it, and then tell them what you said. So say it. The main body of the speech takes up 75 to 95% of your time. The most important thing to realize is that your audience won't remember more than a few points you take away. Do your homework, pay attention to how you transition within the speech or presentation. And then tell them what you said. The end might take 5 to 10% of your time. Many professional speakers consider the conclusion to be as important as the introduction, so don't drop the ball with that. All right, and then we hit our career corner model of readiness. So you can see there the ones highlighted in red really are really take a look at this chapter as a whole. And right there, we take a look and an end to our chapter 15 lecture. So there we have it, end of chapter 15. So again, as you guys know, we're getting close to the end. So making sure that we're not losing focus. We're continuing to study. We're continuing to do the things that have made you successful up to this point in the course, because we still got one more after this. Chapter 15, your last quiz, but with chapter 16 comes our last big final exam. So no time now to let off the gas and slam on the brakes. It is definitely time to continue trying to work and be as successful as you can. So as always, if you guys have any questions, and whenever you're listening to this, whether it be morning, night, or day, have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you for the final chapter, chapter 16, here soon.